Welcome to another episode of the People of Packaging podcast. Today we are going to have Robert Champion. Robert is the president of Innoflex Solutions, and Innoflex is doing some really cool things helping connect OEMs to CPG companies. But Robert has a really cool story. He went from corporate America working for some incredible companies like Nestle and Kellogg's, and he went out on his own, and he's helping to bridge the gap and helping companies understand who are making packaging equipment how to go in and talk to companies and solve some real world problems in those companies. So you're going to learn a lot about Robert, a lot about his company Innoflex Solutions, and we are so excited to tell his story. You get myself and you get Ted on this interview, so I hope you enjoy. Welcome everybody to yet another episode. We are cranking these out during COVID because you guys are all sick of the Tiger King and you're sick of Netflix. And I know that what you want to do is you want to listen to some people talk about packaging. So this is a great episode. We've got Robert Champion, Ted Tate and I are conducting the interview together. So that's super fun and exciting. Robert, welcome to the People of Packaging podcast.
Well, Adam, thank you for inviting me, and it's an exciting time, and also Ted to be a part of this podcast. So, thank you. Very interested in getting to it.
Yeah, and you know, I'm excited because you're just doing some cool stuff. You've got a really cool background, and you know, you and I have talked about things like packaging, and as we've discussed, like I have a pastoral background and we shared that. So it's just cool to meet people where you got a lot of that in common. And I'm excited to dig into wherever the conversation goes. Remember the old books, the Choose Your Own Adventure? Do you remember those?
I don't know.
Oh man. So
I was probably out playing baseball or something.
So there were these books that were written there. You would read it and then it said like, and if you would say yes to this question, turn to page 62. And if you would say no, turn to page 50. And then you had to, it was always different. Anyway, sometimes that's how these interviews go.
Dude,
so Robert, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you and where do you live, and just some of the, some of the details of your life.
Yeah, good. Thanks again, Adam.
Yeah.
So again, Robert Champion, it's very interesting to talk about yourself. It becomes a little bit like, where do I start? I start reflecting back, life's journey. One of the important things about me when I think about life is life's journey, right? So you reflect back on things you've done, and then, hindsight is, 20/20 because you can see the results of good decisions and bad. But at the end of the day, it's all a journey. So I think one of the things for me was, if I go back, talk about, just a little bit about my beginning, and I'm proud to say it, right? So, grew up on the south side of Chicago, in the 70s. I'm dating myself, but, as a preteen back in the 70s, one of the things I remember the most about growing up in our times was that there were a lot of activities that the community provided. For instance, you could go to our local park districts and learn woodworking. You could learn how to run track. You could play basketball. You could ice skate. We ice skated in the winter. We played hockey, got on sleds in the wintertime. We made do with our environment, which is a very good environment. And there was a lot of cohesion. There were a lot of mentors around at that time too. So when we played baseball as a young person, there were people we looked up to that played semi-pro baseball. We were playing Little League. And so we would adore how they would play. We would adore the uniforms that they had on, and just have a role model that probably didn't know your name, but you were just insightful about what they did and how they did it. And I think the biggest thing, if I reflect back on my childhood, was my influence of my father. And I think in these times right now, having, for me, a male influence has laid the foundation for my life. Example, my father was he had his own construction company. So he was an entrepreneur at heart, right? So you would call him a handyman, glorified handyman that could do everything, that was always busy. Where my four brothers and myself, me being the eldest, we worked in his business in the summertime. So the deal was, if you wanted to play baseball, which we loved, you had to work for him in our summer breaks, the beginning of the morning till about 3 in the afternoon, then we would squeeze in baseball. So one of the foundational things he laid in my life, my brother's life, was the value of ownership, the value of being an entrepreneur, and the value of creating something that can empower other people to be part of the journey. So if I reflect back on Robert Champion, it starts from my childhood, because a seed was planted then, and through my career, I took a very different route, getting my engineering degree. So we'll talk about growing up in the public school system of Chicago. Very good system at the time. We learned a lot, but I took an untraditional route going through college. So coming out of grammar school and high school, I was going to go to Pepperdine University in California. I was telling my daughter recently. And because of my family's circumstances at the time, I stayed home and I went to junior college first. So I started out in junior college, Olive Harvey College in Chicago, south side of Chicago. And I went there and I started out in an intern program working for a company called, at that time, American National Can, which is a big supplier of cans to the beverage industry.
Okay.
And again here, mentorship and internship helped groom me, being around people that were seasoned in the industry, watching what they did, how they did it, applying what I learned in the classroom, real time, inside American National Can. So from that journey, it led me to mechanical engineering, which is where my passion was. Actually, it's architectural engineering. But somehow I got my hands around mechanical engineering. And I like intricate things and how to figure things out and challenges, right? So I think engineering overall is about challenge and creativity and about driving for results. Yeah?
Yeah, now I got 2 questions for you on that.
Sure.
Number one is, you're talking about Chicago and baseball. So which is it? I don't know. South side of Chicago, is that like you have to be a White Sox fan, or do you have to be like, how does that work? I don't know.
Adam, that's a great question, because growing up, my friends and I, we didn't know. I had friends that were Sox fans, but we were Cub fans, right? So it was, who was your favorite player? I don't know how it happened, but there's certain players you just like. I don't know, you like their style, position that they played, mimic after them. So no, it just basically, you didn't have to be loyal to, the team on your side of the town.
Okay. And who was your favorite player?
My favorite player was Jose Cardinal, was a shortstop. Jose Cardinal, probably never heard of him, but he played for several teams, and also Ernie Banks, Ron Santo. I could name the whole team, because we'd just be a loyal fan. Yeah. But that's how I mimic. We would go play mimicking them. And again, back to life, I'll talk more about my life journey. A lot of my growth and development have been from observation and application for success.
My second question is really silly, but again, sticking in Chicago, you referred to yourself in the third person. You said the story of Robert Champion. And I know another famous Chicago resident, Kanye West, does that often. Is that something that just comes naturally with growing up in Chicago, or I'm just playing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hey, I don't even know. It's just subliminal, I guess. I shouldn't have done that, but
no. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, it's taking yourself out and then trying to narrate about your life, I guess. I don't know if that's got it. Yeah. That's interesting.
Cool. Yeah. My buddy, one of my best friends in the whole world growing up, because, WGN, and I lived in Colorado before the Rockies were there. So they were just Cubs fans, because that's just who you watched. And so I adore him, always talking it was like Ryan Sandberg and Andre Dawson, that crew.
Oh, that was a different era. I love them too.
Different era. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different era. Lots of Cubs fans out there. That's cool. And so, you got into engineering, and you've mentioned this a couple of times already about the importance of mentorship. So, your father, and then also just some other people. What was that like, going through school and even into some early jobs?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned, that listening is a very good skill set. And like, knowledge is power, but wisdom is application of knowledge. And what I found is, if you look at personality traits also of individuals, I've done a lot of, work or some trainings around personalities, knowing people, their culture, their how they're made, their thought process will help you. So, I thought, and for me, one of the earlier books I read in my career was Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. written many years ago, and the trainings about that. That book is so powerful because I believe at the end of the day, knowledge is great, but without application and then doing it through people, you won't be very successful, right? So I found that just by the mentorship aspect allowed me to observe, ask questions, go back, apply, re-ask the question again, and I learned very rapidly that way. I believe in minimizing mistakes. I don't have to be the first one to try it to fail. I learn quickly from others and then make my own fewer mistakes, right? Because time is of the essence.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's very interesting because that's what I teach my kids is, you don't have to make the mistakes. If you observe the people around you, you can learn from their mistakes and just don't go down the same path. So that's what I live by. I have an older brother who made some mistakes, and whenever he would get in trouble, I say, okay, I'm not doing that. Or I'll do that in a different way so I don't get in trouble, So
Yeah.
I grew up learning from, other people's mistakes.
Sure.
I'm not a glutton for punishment.
No. And I think with life having a time span on it, so if you look at individuals, if you talk about us as entities, and I'm again, what do you add to life? Life have a certain time frame, right? So I think we need to maximize what we do with the time we have. And I think we get fooled because when you're in your 20s and 30s, you think, you don't even look at what does 40 and 50 look like until you get there. You look backwards and you say, whatever I didn't do, now I need to accelerate it and get it done. And hopefully I can get it done because we all have a gift to leave someone. Is where do we leave it in corporate? Do we leave it in community? First start at home with family. And that's firmly what I believe.
Yeah. Well, you hit on one of my favorite verses actually, which is knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. So when you're talking about, wisdom is knowledge applied, man, that I wrote that down too. That was, I think we're going to have a lot of, you should start a quote book is what I'm trying to say. Like you have a lot of wisdom already. We're only, whatever it is, 10 minutes in. So I'm excited. You entered into the corporate world, and I'm excited to get into what you're doing now. But what were those sort of corporate jobs like? I know you've worked for some OEMs, you've worked for some
Sure.
CPG companies, and so maybe talk through your work experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. Again, work
Yeah.
if I look at the roadmap, so if you said, what was the roadmap to get to where I landed? I'll just say it this way. I followed the way the water was flowing. And what do I mean by that? I had always had to remember from being a young guy, my father had ambition to do more and to do more than I was able to do. So again, at 12, 14, 15, we were painting houses. We were putting gutters up. We were hanging drywall, things that people in their 20s would do, but we did more with what strength we had. So when I started reflecting back on my career in engineering, I was always the youngest in the group, right? So I started out with American National Can, like 1920, right? Everyone else is in their 30s. So socially, there was a disadvantage. So if you look at today with boomers and millennials, is how do you thresh through that gap so that we win? And that's one opportunity in corporate America today. I'll talk about Innoflex Solutions, how we can help bridge that. So one of the things was, I wasn't too forward. I was kind of reserved, my personality. Because I was at an age disadvantage. But what I was smart enough to try. I was not afraid to fail. And because I had the aptitude, mechanical engineering aptitude, I wasn't afraid to try and to be inquisitive, right? So when I said my journey was like water, I followed where it would lead me. So, for instance, getting married in my mid-20s, my wife and I decided, maybe it's time to make a move. So economically, I made changes because two reasons. One, I wanted to learn more. And if I felt stagnant and the right opportunity, I didn't seek opportunities. They always have come to me. I would listen at the right time. And for my family, we made a decision to make a career change. And the career change always through my career was for growth. It wasn't about the dollar value being an 8% increase or 10% increase or 20%. It was about, is there a bogey out here that I haven't attained that I can probably grow my skill set? So every role was a skill set builder. So at American National Can, we left there and we went to work for some smaller companies. Then I landed a real good career job at a company called Paxall Clybourne in Chicago, which was bought out by SASIB, S-A-S-I-B, which is owned by someone else now. And they were in primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging equipment. So the design, the engineering, the building, the shipping installation is where I really cut my teeth. And basically, everything from coming off the drawing board, which I'm dating myself, to going onto CAD systems, you know, learning all that, was basically just driving through. So one of the key things was I was never afraid again to try for more. And I've always had, for some reason, favor and that probably I didn't see in myself before. There was someone older that pulled me in on their team and said, hey, I want you to work on this part of the machine, etc. And I got going and we delivered results. So everything was incremental building. So fast forward through my OEM experience, I ended up in Michigan, where I'm based today, working for a big OEM company called Innoflex Incorporated out of Oslo, Norway, which is a big competitor at the time to Evergreen Packaging, to their systems, and also sort of a quasi-competitor to Tetra Pak, which is very big, as you know, in the bricks, a small retail size. But I'm jumping through some job changes and titles because that's really is not all that important to me. What's important to me is building people and building character. So let me back up a bit. So in my journey, I've always built teams, and I had a vision for what the team should look like. I was entrusted to build that team with a strategy, and we deliver results. So that's, again, has built my building block. So at Innoflex, I started out in the early 2000s, no, late 90s, I'm sorry. And I had 3 or 4 different roles in about 5 or 6 years. My most significant role was handling their design engineering group and their project engineering group at some point in time, had both. The most important value I had, strategy and value I had, was taking a department that only had X quantity of people and building 75% of the department staff with a plan on how we would drive and build and design these very expensive, high-end filling machines, right, for the dairy industry, juice industry, wine industry. We're talking about machines with very sophisticated systems, from HVAC system, clean air, to sterilization systems, to some very intricate, there's all these subsystems. So the equipment at the time was, I'm just giving a framework on the value of it. It was between $900,000 to over $1 million, right? One piece of machinery. And so the big piece here was I had a chance to hire talent, have that talent lead other teams to duplicate results. And at the end of the day, we were able to expand our portfolio, meaning we're able to sell equipment to other parts of the market that we were basically landlocked in. For instance, we were able to design machines that did yogurt, that filled yogurt in a gable top carton vertically. So we're talking about high viscous and low viscous yogurt, pourable and a little thick. Well, this had never been done before. You had one side, in one carton, you were able to fill strawberry, chocolate, and you had a syrup in between. So you had these 3 different distinct viscosities and densities. Yeah. And again, we had to design the whole machine, morph it from what we had. It was very stressful. It was a challenging situation. The budgets were overrun because we took on more than we could bite. But at the end of the day, the team believed in the results. They believed we could do it. And one of the biggest things learning from my earlier career, was that dream bigger than you're capable of. And then we had a mentoring aspect. So the people I had in leadership roles running my department, as far as technology leaders, manage a group of people. So we worked in that paradigm where they were able to drive that through, mentor the team through. We grew people. And these people today, they're in other roles, in other companies, doing very, very well.
Great.
So coming out of Innoflex, my OEM experience, I launched into the food company. So we can get into that. So the OEM world In the food world, they're different, but they're very similar because they serve the same people, right? One is pulling equipment, want to buy it, the other wants to sell. At the end of the day, the customer, consumer is driving both.
So from an engineering standpoint, when you moved over to the food companies, was your role pretty much the same in terms of engineering management, or did your roles change as an engineer for food companies?
Good question, Ted. Yes, the role change. It was a different role. It was responsible for capital investments across multiple operations, facilities, plants. They call them plants, Kellogg's. And there was basically, you had a budget. You work cross-functionally. So again, as an OEM, you work pretty much within an OEM organization. Again, growing, remember I talked about my career earlier, always trying to grow and incrementally advance my capabilities. So working for the food companies, it was more holistic across different functions. So I grew now knowing more about finance, more about, why we invest, why a return is required, more about industry regulations and compliance, FDA regulations and safety regulations, throughput. So now you take your capital equipment and your materials that run in that equipment, right? So you got materials, you've got food, as an OEM, you deliver the equipment. You may test run it with some of the food and the materials, but you're not producing it day to day to understand the world that they're living. So to really get that information into an OEM is a gap. And I'm going to talk about Innoflex solution, why we exist, because there is this gap of what we think they need, and what we actually deliver. So again, fast forward to Kellogg's, going across marketing and sales and being in those meetings, again, learning. What does marketing want and why? Why do they want the package to be smaller? Why? Because the demographics say that the older people they can't open packages, they don't have the strength. So there's some safety issues with far as their hand articulation to open packages and the seal quality. And just learning a lot about food. So really learning a lot about how food is made and how that relates to packaging materials and into the primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging containers. That gave me a whole new perspective. And now you're talking about volume. So you're talking about mass production of products, right? So I learned a lot about, just holistically, a lot of things about food form. So definitely a growth opportunity working for, starting off at Kellogg's in the food side of the business.
Okay. But that wasn't your last stop before Innoflex. So what happened in between? How do we get to Innoflex?
Oh yeah.
I don't think we heard the other steps yet.
No, you haven't. Water flows, right? You have to follow the water. And sometimes if there's a valley, it's going to flow. It's going to flow. So I followed the water. So I was recruited out of Kellogg's to work for Nestle USA and to work and lead their packaging equipment group for the foods business, which is their frozen business. And I was operating an autonomy of one at the time. There was a position available, probably 3 years in, for a market role for Nestle USA, leading all of packaging across 30 or so manufacturing facilities. Also working with co-manufacturers with part of our other divisions, co-packers, as we needed to engage. And then build the staff. Again, I built the staff. So there was no one but myself. I built the staff. They trusted the plan. They had a vision. I locked my vision to their vision, created a strategy and a plan of implementation and execution. We did that. And the key thing about working at Nestle was big food company, similar but different than Kellogg. And every company and organization has a culture. So I talked about earlier being able to listen, and the millennials versus, and the baby boomers and now Gen X's and Gen Z's, how do you cohabitate together? And again, you're going to hire people from all these different demographics and age groups. So the key is you got to have a vision for win, and what does win look like to that person? And do they believe in it? And then what can they contribute? Find their skill set or their talent, lock into that and help them win. So we were able to build a team where we were responsible for, you can only imagine the size of the capital investments every year that we would make, very substantial. all right, 3-digit millions. And we were responsible for working with outside OEMs and with third-party engineering and with our different colleagues across the Nestle world globally to harmonize on standards, to harmonize on the right packaging solutions, to drive OEMs into understanding what we need and help them understand what FDA standards mean and all the different acronyms of the food industry, like total cost of ownership and material variance and what that looks like and throughput. So we were able, my role was more strategic at Nestle, and was able to create some real good footprints and actually, recently left Nestle last July to form Innoflex Solutions, which is right behind me. And Ted, as I got into it, I'll just get right to Innoflex. Innoflex Solutions was created.
Hey, Robert, can I jump in real quick? Sorry,
Yeah,
I had a question.
I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I know.
I know. I'm so pumped for you to talk about Innoflex. I had one question that I just wanted to dig in on because you've covered so many incredible things already. When you're talking about formulation of teams, and you mentioned needing different generations of people, and different. You're going to have different ethnicities. You're going to have different generations. You're going to have when you're formulating these teams. Did you find that the more diverse of thought you were getting in on those teams allowed you to, make better decisions, or because there's a lot of talk within the business world about that right now, that and a lot of data that's supporting that would in fact be the case. So I'm just curious, you were at Nestle and you were at Kellogg. If you don't know who those companies are, you're probably not listening to this podcast, and you probably live under a rock. So,
or don't eat the food,
or you don't eat. Yeah. So, did you notice that during your time, that having these kind of mentorship relationships intergenerationally, and then bringing people together, was that useful and beneficial?
100%, Adam. The whole is better by the sum of its parts. Mm. And to build a house, you need different materials. It's a poor analogy, but you need different types of wood. You need different types of mortar. You need, all the tools are different, but you need them all to have a good foundation. I think subliminally, unconsciously, because I look at the world as people are people, and that they're all created equal. They all have value. They all bring something that I don't have to the table, that I should listen. And I always felt that there is always someone smarter than me, and I wanted to hire the best talent, always, right? Not afraid, not intimidated by, because
right.
Our roles could be better if we hired the right talent. So I think just all through my career, we've always, when I ran staffs or hired staff, I hired the best available candidate, right? And whoever was the best got hired. But I saw that the energy level, for instance, from millennials, for instance, and how they view things in the workplace, we utilize that and allow them to help us see through a different lens what the solution is to a problem, right? So, and not get so stymied because of having silo thinking. Like, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Right.
If you want to get on a bus and drive 5 miles an hour and get to your destination in 30 days, that's the route. Faster in a day or 5 or less, then you get on a plane, you get a diverse team of people, you collaborate, you weed out thought processes, and you train people. Right. You train people about the differences of how they think. And remember, I talked about Chicago, where my upbringing was. My traditional role to get into engineering, to get my engineering degree, finally got my engineering degree online, as a matter of fact. I got it as an adult online, was a commitment. That's not the traditional route, but it was a route for me, and it allowed me to have those positions, and now at Innoflex, to be the voice of reason into the marketplace, because there is this white space I talked about earlier that's not filled. In my career, working for OEMs and CPGs, and working with third-party engineering, working with internal functions, I've seen and assessed the same gaps that I assessed probably 20 years ago.
Wow. So you to go out on your own to start Innoflex?
I didn't hear you, Ted. Repeat, please.
I said, was that the spark for you to go out on your own to form Innoflex?
No, wasn't really. You got great questions. Like water.
Where the
I,
water
I'm
flow.
Yeah, I'm like an inner perspective person. I go back to my childhood. It starts in my childhood. I remember the values that my father put on. It was not easy work, but it was work where he was in control and he was able to employ people. So he did more with being in business than would do for himself. So he was able to service the community more. And that was the seed again, the seed. For me, it was about my life's journey. All right. So Innoflex Solution exists it's a for-profit organization. Yeah. The reason for starting Innoflex Solution is two reasons. One, because of my personal relationship with my creator. We have talks, and through my life, we've talked about when is the right time to do this, because there's this nudge inside that says, this is what you should do. You're not ready right now, but you're going to be doing this. And I rebelled and repelled against it. Yeah. Why would you retire from a corporation where you're basically in a great position? You have a lot of autonomy and you get paid a very good salary. Why? Well, there's no reason to. Just got a great staff. We've got that engine turning. They know what to do. We know the processes. You can do it in your sleep. Well, that was not what I was supposed to do. So it was a very difficult personal decision, because when you reach the level where you're respected in community, you're respected in corporate America, you have footprint in organizations externally of your corporation, where you in some of the speaking, being invited to speak at some of the forums, it feels good. But then but what really drove me was checking what my creator said I should do. And secondly, filling this void, leading the packaging equipment group for Nestle USA, where we were having a lot of success, but there was better successes we could have if OEMs really understood what we were asking them to do, and really understood when you install a system inside of our manufacturing facility, there is this process that needs to take place before, after it starts up, and after the sell. And a lot of the big gap, Ted, is really understanding our key drivers. Why we sell what we sell. Why is our consumer asking us to deliver this to their stores, meaning the retail stores and e-commerce? And why are they asking for it so fast? And then the OEMs are not equipped to move so fast, and the food companies are trying to figure out how to change their factories to address that. So really what I was facing was, man, we're getting the equipment. Sometimes it's not on time as I like to have. And then a lot of what I was seeing was just the aggravation of getting the machines out of their facilities for various reasons, just not prepared to deliver. So I said, this is a bridge, and Innoflex Solution is a great opportunity to do two things: to establish a brand and fix the gaps that are in the marketplace. And also I have a great desire to be a philanthropist in the community. I go back to my roots. I go back to when I was in Chicago, how I had, I can remember my first baseball coach, how he invested in me for 3 seasons, and he instilled in me values that I'd taken to me all my life. And I said, that's what the world is missing, is people that are really going to get involved, their hands dirty, go in communities, go in areas, and give people hope, give them opportunity. Don't just give them something, but give them the knowledge and the power to do it. Give them an example to say, hey, here I am. I've come up from the south side of Chicago, right? Look at it today. It's not what it used to be, but you can do better. I'm an example. Here's how we can help you do it. Mentor, coach, give them insight. Be there for them for a phone call. When they're in a tough meeting in corporate America, they don't know how to come out of that meeting and how to deliver. When their boss is eating them out and they don't know how they should respond, how do you help groom them to make it through a 30-year career? They're going to be 3 years here and 5 years here, not like we were. They're going to be in and out quicker, but still, how do you help them see the whole vision and to fulfill the dream that they have? Again, they're here for a short period of time on this earth, and we want to maximize their potential to give something back to whomever they work for and in their community.
You're going to get me preaching over here, Robert. Yeah. You're going. That's awesome. So Innoflex, you guys do you're doing consulting. You can see it in the banner if you're watching the video, if you're listening to the podcast audibly, consulting, engineering, packaging equipment. You've got, I think it's really important that we get this holistic view of who you are. because it really lends a lot of credibility to what you're doing, both from a practical standpoint and then also the philosophical altruistic standpoint. So that's really cool. So Innoflex is filling this gap. How?
Oh yeah, good
What is
point.
that? What is that?
So the gap is, I'm going to just at the lowest level for me to understand. Equipment that ships on time, your internal costs that are meeting your internal targets and not you're not overlapping or exceeding your budget, and products that are shipped to stores on time. Right? If you can do those three things, you will have revenue coming in, and your costs will be low. So we basically we assess your company, your entity, on where you are at and where your goals are planned to be, and then who are your customers and clients, and how do you plan to get that? We help fill those gaps with processes and coaching and mentoring, if it's process driven or if it's actual tactical. So if you talk about, again, FAT, how do you do a good FAT? With virtual FATs today, how do you make sure your machines are going to be ready to rock and roll?
And FAT is factory authorized testing.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But before the factory authorized testing, before you get there, there's a whole set of tools that are not being done today well. And so here's where Innoflex will look. So we would say, how is your engineering team? What's the makeup of engineering team? What's the experience level? How many systems have you done, and what systems? Do you know the basics of packaging systems? There's some basics, and here are the 4 basics. Do you know, or this is a question you would invariably you would get an answer to, why baseline conditions are important on materials? Why is baseline conditions on the equipment important? Why is training baseline conditions important to understand? And the 4th one is, how is this system designed to operate? So if you answer those questions on the front side in the very feasibility stage of bidding out a project to your OEMs, your material suppliers, and the product understanding, all the variability, at the end of the day, the gap I see is, I can sell you a nice packaging machine to case pack your product. I can sell you a nice filler. It hums like a bird. But you know what? No one's talking and unveiling that, sometimes the product we're running is not in spec. And sometimes the material is not within spec. We randomly get it out of spec. We don't know why we have these hiccups, but we have downtime. We don't meet our case rate. So what we want to do is make sure baseline conditions is understood and put processes and procedures in place to overcome them before they're a problem. And now you can drive into a lot of tools we have today, which is automation, devices and sensors and Internet of Things, and getting data out and AI. All those are great, but in order to enable those, you have to do the basics first. It's like you want to put a sensor on a packaging machine motor, right, and also on its gearbox, and also a thermal temperature, but the center line of the conveyor is out of whack, right? The belt keeps tracking off track. Well, why don't we worry about centerlining the belt first, so we don't get an overload on the motor and the gearbox, that you're getting a trailing indicator, which is the temperature of the motor, which is a good indicator. But you can have a leading indicator, is, are you doing some things to ensure that your system is well in balance? So a lot of thinking today is about how to deliver excellence on the front end and use sensors and devices as checks to validate. And when things start to tweak and get out of line, you can get the information on your iPhone, get it at your HMI, human machine interface, or your iPad to do something about it. So let me summarize, Adam. Innoflex solution fills the gaps where third-party engineering firms don't look, where food companies don't have the resources or talent probably to deliver it, and where OEMs don't think about food companies' goals thoroughly, outside of selling their commodity, 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. We think about the system, right? We think about the consumer pulling the CPG, the customer, who pulls the supplier, the OEMs. So we think through the whole value chain.
Okay. Makes sense. I'm surprised that there was that much of a gap for these companies that
Well,
have been around forever.
if you look up statistical data, because I love data, I do a lot of data digging, and you look up census data and look at the investment, capital equipment investment globally, it's in the billions. I mean, it's like almost $1 trillion, 2016 data, all right? And this is probably inclusive of packaging and processing equipment, maybe pharma, but it just says manufacturing equipment. It's 900 some odd billion. This is public information. $7 billion of that was waste. So companies, wow. Yeah, you look it up. It's out there. I can send it. But that's, so you asked me, yeah, is that, yeah, it happened to me. So I'm a living witness to say, yeah, I know it happens because it happened to me. Meaning late shipments, not prepared for factory acceptance tests, failed factory acceptance tests many times sometimes, internal processes that are not maintained, like project management of the suppliers supplying equipment, not really having a good handle on their internal structures to deliver on time. And then the third one, I was just made aware of this by an external company that I work with. It could be because they're hedging. They're placing the order before they know what the real equipment is going to, what packages is going to run a product. They're hedging to get a place in the supply chain of the OEM so they can have it delivered and deal with the results later, like tweaking it. They said they get a lot of orders like that. But what that says in today's climate, that's no longer acceptable. If you look at food companies and how they're selling off brands because they're not profitable, well, we need to fix that, right? So we want those food companies who are pulling everybody in the ecosystem, the packaging ecosystem, we need to make sure they're healthy. So we need to understand their world. And I thought about this coming just, this morning, getting my head around things. If we had OEMs that will just engage more with their customers and take the time to understand their business from a partnership standpoint before they sell a commodity, they will be probably top of mind and win more business because they understood the challenges that the food companies face and why they're facing them, and their equipment offering provides a solution. Meaning you don't have to be a problem, but I'm just saying you will find that this whole waste of money and resources, would be decreased significantly. I know it can be done. Okay. That's why Innoflex Solution. That's our vision. One of our visions is to, our vision is to be disruptive in the marketplace, to be a preferred supplier to B2B businesses to help them win.
That's awesome. Well, we're kind of running up against it here, so I'll jump in and ask my favorite question. So a couple minutes, what are 60 seconds, 90 seconds? You're given the magic scepter, the magic packaging scepter, and you're able to wave it and fix any problem in the packaging space. So what's maybe one or two problems that you would just love to see solved? And you can say, you can dream really big, it could just be ocean plastics or something like that. So
that's great. I keep it simple.
Okay.
This is a term I'm using a lot and actually using on some webinars I'm on. It's understanding the modes of operation. Modes of operation. And that means if you understand the intent of that material, of that product, of the operators, how that packaging system will work, you can design it, you can integrate it, you can sustain it. And all the inputs, sustainable materials, recyclable, AI, they're enablers to ensure that. But if you don't understand the modes of operation, you can't switch and go, high volume, same product versus small SKUs, like running a batch of 10 and turn that line off, right? Or be creative. I think at the end of the day, if I were to sum it up, most of my conversation has been, does that person across sitting from me trying to pursue my business understand my business?
Right. Yep.
So my internet gave me a little question was going to be regarding if you had the superpower.
Oh, I already asked him. I already asked him. Yeah, your internet cut out, so I just jumped in.
And the last one would be, the last part of that would be be a little more less risk adverse. And I find a lot of smaller companies, they're able to be nimbler, more agile, and they can, and that's just the nature of their systems, is, let's find a way to be more agile and quicker, and then take some strategic risks, right? And because engineering, I got involved in engineering because it's a challenge, solving problems and doing something new. Remember I talked about the yogurt project. It was, you go to school, you apply all your classes, but then now you got to make that work. How are you going to turn that physics problem into this whole problem of fluid flow and thermal computation, right? And how are you going to get this heat issue? I mean, so all this stuff is, I tell you what, the other thing I think packaging, there's a lot we can go here.
Yeah.
I just started thinking
it's
about
fine.
what's available. Yeah.
I've actually got a hard stop in a few minutes.
Thank you.
So it's been like you said. I mean, we could probably have a second Robert Champion. It'll be called The Champ Is Here Part 2.
There you go. Yeah, hooray!
The quote book.
Yeah, man, you dropped. I mean, I wrote down so much stuff. Robert, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to engage with you about Innoflex?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. We're here to serve you. There's a couple ways. Our email address is, you can get information at www.information@innoflexsolutions.com,
So
or directly to me.
Is it information@innoflexsolutions.com?
Info.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. The direct email address directly to me is robert.champion@innoflexsolutions.com.
Okay.
And you can go on our website to see what we're doing, which is www.innoflexsolutions.com. And you can call me directly. I love to talk sometimes. It's so busy we can hardly pick the phone up to talk. We text a lot, but you can call me. You can call me at area code 248-214-8480, and we will answer the call. And if we miss it, we'll get right back to you.
Perfect.
Hopefully we can help.
Robert, this has been great. Ted, thanks for jumping on as well.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you both.
Appreciate you guys so much. And till the next episode, I guess we'll just keep sharing these stories. So appreciate it.
Thank you both. See you around.
Robert.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah.